The sky over Theravi was a swirl of reds and golds as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Clouds hung low, heavy with the planet's storm energy. For centuries, the people of Theravi had lived in harmony with the strange life forms of their world. Creatures that glowed with bioluminescence, plants that could move subtly, and rocks that seemed to hum faintly. Yet none of this prepared them for the arrival of the human. The first sign of trouble came as a streak of silver light cutting through the sky, brighter than any star. It moved with speed, untamed and unpredictable, trailing sparks like tiny meteorites. Villagers in the plains looked up in awe, pointing and murmuring in their musical, lilting language. Some ran for shelter. Some stood frozen, unable to tear their gaze from the spectacle. Then, with a deafening roar that shook the nearby cliffs, the human ship crashed into the emerald fields, sending clouds of dust and small rocks into the air. Ilaria, the royal healer, was on her way to the court's observatory when she felt the tremor under her feet. She stopped immediately, eyes narrowing. Crashes on Theravi were rare, almost unheard of, and never had anyone reported a metallic vessel in the skies. Something was wrong. Her heart quickened. She had healed many animals, soldiers, even visitors from nearby regions, but the energy signature of this crash was unfamiliar, overwhelming. Without hesitation, she summoned her small group of apprentices and set off toward the impact site. The closer they came, the stronger the heat and light became. The field was scarred, grass burned to brown, rocks shattered, and in the center lay the vessel. It was nothing like the Theran constructs, which were built to harmonize with the planet's energy. This one was rigid, sharp-edged, and it hissed as it cooled, releasing strange vapors. But what caught Ilaria's attention most was not the vessel, it was the figure emerging from it. The human stumbled forward, dragging himself across the ground. He was covered in dark stains, some of them thick and sticky. His clothes were torn, his metallic armor dented, and smoke rose from his shoulder where the ship had grazed him. He moved with a strange determination, ignoring the pain that must have been unbearable. His face was pale, his eyes wide and alert, scanning the area, not for escape, but for some sense of order. He did not call out. He did not groan. He just moved, step by painstaking step, like a creature whose mind refused to accept limits. Ilaria's breath caught. The Therans had long prided themselves on their ability to heal and observe, to understand life in ways no other species could. But she had never seen a being who moved through such trauma and survived. Her apprentices hesitated behind her, unsure whether this was a being to fear or a being to save. Ilaria knew she had to approach. It was her duty. It was her instinct. "Stay calm," she murmured to her apprentices as they stepped forward. Her voice was soft, yet firm. "Observe the energy. Feel its pulse. Do not be afraid." The human noticed them only briefly, his gaze flickering to Ilaria. He assessed them in an instant, and then, without hesitation, he tried to stand straight. His legs trembled, and he nearly collapsed. Ilaria reacted instinctively, reaching out with both hands to steady him. Her fingers hovered just above his skin and then touched him gently, guiding him to lean on her for support. As her hands made contact, she felt it. The human's energy was like nothing she had encountered. His life force burned with intensity, raw and unfiltered. It was chaotic, yes, but there was a rhythm to it, steady and unyielding. She gasped inwardly, unable to mask her astonishment. Every part of his body screamed of pain, of exhaustion. Yet somehow it was balanced by determination and endurance that was beyond any known species. He was alive, but he should not have been. Not under these conditions, who? "Are you?" Ilaria asked, keeping her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Rylan." "Hail," he said, voice faint but firm. "Captain." And then his strength failed him, and he collapsed against her. She and her apprentices managed to support him, lowering him to the soft ground. His breathing was rapid but steady. His chest rose and fell with effort, and Ilaria could feel every beat like a drum echoing in the quiet field. Ilaria examined him carefully. There were burns, scratches, bruises, and his armor was mangled. His body had endured impacts, heat, and trauma that should have rendered him unconscious permanently. Yet he lived. Every fiber of his being insisted on life. Her hands worked almost automatically, summoning gentle streams of healing energy, weaving them through his injuries. The glow of her palms did not burn him. It coexisted with his own inner energy, and slowly, the worst of the smoke and heat damage began to settle. Her apprentices whispered among themselves, astounded. How? How is he still alive? One asked. Ilaria shook her head. I do not know, she said softly. I have healed many. I have mended countless bodies, but his essence refuses to break. Observe closely. Remember this for your studies. No creature should withstand such trauma. Yet he does. He is extraordinary. The sun dipped further below the horizon, casting long shadows over the field. The human stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment panic crossed his features, though it was quickly replaced by focus. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Ilaria placed a calming hand on his shoulder. Rest now, she urged. You are safe. He nodded weakly, closing his eyes. But even in rest, the energy he emitted was alive, strong and unyielding. Ilaria could feel it pulsing, almost like a heartbeat in the ground itself. She had never felt anything like it. The night fell, and the stars of Thera V glimmered faintly above. Fireflies moved in gentle arcs around them, illuminating the wreckage of the ship and the still form of the human. Ilaria's mind raced. She had seen many forms of life, many limits, many boundaries, but Rylan Hale, this human, existed beyond every expectation. There was no denying it. His survival was not luck. It was not merely biology. It was willpower. Pure, unbending human willpower. In the distance, small Theran creatures began to emerge from the forest, drawn by the light of the healing. They did not approach aggressively. They observed. Even they sensed something remarkable about the human. Ilaria noted the way their wings shimmered and the way they hovered near, hesitant, respectful. Her apprentices marveled at this interaction, realizing that even the world itself seemed to recognize the uniqueness of this being. Hours passed, and Rylan began to speak again, weaker but steady. Are there others? He asked. Crew. Alive. Ilaria shook her head gently. I do not know. You are the first to emerge from the vessel. The others may be lost. But we will do what we can to help you survive. He nodded again. His gaze fell upon the stars visible through the break in the clouds. There was no fear, only determination. I have work to do, he said softly. We can't leave anyone behind. Ilaria watched him with a mix of admiration and concern. His body was fragile, his energy taxed beyond natural limits, yet his mind remained clear, sharp, and resolute. She had seen bravery before in soldiers and explorers, but this was different. It was a deep, fundamental refusal to accept defeat. His species' capacity to endure and to continue despite suffering was evident in every breath he took. Through the night, she tended to him, weaving energy, observing his unusual endurance, noting the resilience of his heartbeat, and marveling at the way his body, though battered, refused to give in. She made mental notes of every detail, knowing that what she was witnessing would change the way her people viewed humans forever. By morning, the first light of Thera V illuminated the field. Rylan sat up, testing his strength. Ilaria and her apprentices held their breath. For a moment, he wavered, but then steadied himself. He looked toward the distant cliffs, the forests, the unknown dangers that lay beyond, and he smiled faintly. I can manage, he said simply. Ilaria felt a chill of awe. She had healed countless beings, but she had never seen one survive with such unwavering determination. She realized in that moment that humans were not like any other creatures she had studied. They did not merely endure, they thrived in the face of adversity. And their will could surpass the limits of the physical, she whispered under her breath. Almost to herself, no creature should survive. Yet you do. You are human. And in that moment, she knew that this encounter was not just about healing a wounded traveler. It was about witnessing a new understanding of life, strength, and endurance. Humanity, in its essence, was more than just a species. It was an idea. A force that defied logic, and Rylan Hale was living proof as the sun rose higher. Ilaria prepared to take him to the safety of her sanctuary, where she could continue her care and study. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she felt a spark of hope. For the first time, she understood that perhaps humans were not fragile creatures as many Therans believed. They were unbreakable, and in the quiet of the dawn, with the wreckage behind them and the unknown stretching before, Ilaria could only watch in awe as the human rose to walk again. Every step a testament to the endurance of his species. The morning sun rose over the emerald plains of Thera V, casting a soft golden light across the shipwreck and the surrounding fields. Captain Rylan Hale had spent the night under Ilaria's careful observation, resting as much as his restless mind allowed. Though his body ached from the crash, he refused to stay idle. Humans were not built for waiting. They were built to move forward, to act even when every fiber of their being begged for rest. Ilaria watched him as he tested his strength again. The first tentative steps were careful, calculated, but steady. She could feel the determination radiating from him, a force she had never encountered in any other being. The energy he carried was not merely physical, it was mental, emotional, and unbreakable. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Ilaria said softly. Her hands hovered near him, ready to assist if needed. "Your body cannot handle another challenge yet." Rylan shook his head. "That safe doesn't solve anything. I need to find my crew. They might be out there." He pointed toward the distant forest, where smoke still lingered from the crash. "We need to see if anyone survived." Ilaria hesitated. The forests of Thera V were alive with creatures that, while not aggressive by nature, could be dangerous to someone in his condition. Yet she sensed that arguing with him would be futile. The human mind had its own determination, and she had already witnessed its power. She nodded slowly. "Then we go together," she said. The journey was slow. Rylan leaned on Ilaria for support, but every step was taken with effort, and every movement tested his endurance. Even so, he never complained. His focus remained on the task at hand. As they approached the forest edge, Ilaria noticed the way his senses worked differently from the Therans. As his eyes scanned for movement, his ears caught even the faintest. The sound of leaves brushing together, and his instincts seemed attuned to the rhythm of the environment. "You notice everything?" Ilaria said quietly. "Even the smallest details?" Rylan offered a faint smile. "I have too. Out there, missing something can cost lives." As they entered the forest, the light changed. The thick canopy above filtered the sun into streaks of green and gold. The air was rich with scents and energies unfamiliar to Rylan, yet he adapted quickly, moving with a careful balance between caution and speed. Ilaria followed, noting his ability to read the environment almost instinctively. Even weakened by injuries, he adjusted with a grace that surprised her. Hours passed as they searched for survivors. They found traces of the other humans' footprints, scattered belongings, and signs of struggle, but no living crew. Alan's heart tightened at each discovery, but he pressed on. Ilaria marveled at his resilience. Every obstacle, every setback, only strengthened his resolve. Where a Theran might pause in despair or confusion, Rylan found determination. As midday approached, the forest opened into a wide clearing. At its center lay a small pond, its water clear and calm. Rylan knelt beside it, dipping a hand into the water and washing the grime from his face. Ilaria followed suit, using her energy to purify the water slightly so it would not harm him. "You don't seem to tire," she said, still watching him with awe. He shook his head. "Tired doesn't mean stopping. It means moving differently. Humans find ways to keep going." Ilaria studied him carefully. She had read about human resilience in her texts, but seeing it firsthand was different. It was not merely physical. Humans endured pain, fatigue, and fear in ways that seemed impossible. They continued not because their bodies demanded it, but because their minds insisted. As they rested briefly, a small creature emerged from the pond. It was a Theran amphibian, translucent and glowing faintly with its own energy. It moved with caution, observing Rylan and Ilaria. Rylan extended a hand slowly, and the creature approached without fear. Illyria watched in surprise. Most Theran animals were cautious around strangers, but this one seemed to sense something different about him. "You have a calm presence," she said. "Even the creatures respond to you." Rylan shrugged. "Maybe they know I won't hurt them, or maybe they see I'm not giving up." After their short rest, they continued their search. By late afternoon, they reached the site where the ship had left debris scattered across the forest floor. Pieces of the human vessel were half buried in mud, smoke curling gently from damaged circuits. Rylan moved through the wreckage, carefully examining each piece. He found small supplies, water packs, and communication devices, but no sign of the rest of the crew. Ilaria observed his reaction. She expected despair, perhaps anger, even frustration. But instead, he focused on problem-solving, thinking through options, and planning the next steps. His species did not dwell in hopelessness. They calculated, adapted, and moved forward regardless of setbacks. As they worked, they heard a faint sound, a soft whimper, almost lost among the rustling leaves. Rylan froze, listening intently. "There," he whispered. He sprinted toward the sound, his movements careful but precise. Illyria followed, her hands ready to support him if needed. They arrived at a small clearing where a young human was trapped beneath a fallen beam. The child's arm was pinned, and tears streaked her face. Rylan knelt beside her, assessing the injury quickly. "It's okay," he said gently. "We'll get you out." With Illaria's assistance, he lifted the beam just enough for her to crawl free. The child clung to him, exhausted but safe. Illaria's heart swelled with admiration. Even with his own injuries, Rylan's priority was the well-being of others. It was not strength alone that defined Hamet, was empathy combined with endurance. Humans, she realized, did not merely survive for themselves. They carried responsibility for others as part of their resilience. They continued their search and found 2 more survivors, each in a different part of the forest. Both were injured but alive, thanks to Rylan's guidance and Illaria's healing energy. By evening, the small group returned to the sanctuary Ilaria had prepared near the edge of the forest. Fires were lit, herbs and healing crystals arranged, and the wounded were treated carefully. As the night fell, Rylan moved quietly to the edge of the sanctuary. The stars above were different from those he had seen from his shipwriter, unfamiliar constellations twinkling against the deep black sky. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief mingled together. Ilaria approached him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "No creature I have known could endure what you have gone through. Yet you survive, and more than that, you help others survive with you." Rylan shook his head, a faint smile forming despite the pain. "I don't know if it's remarkable. It's just what humans do. We keep going. We find ways. We don't give up, not when others need us." Ilaria studied him, realizing that his endurance was more than physical. It was a philosophy, a drive, a constant refusal to accept the impossible. Humans, she concluded, were not merely strong, they were unbreakable in ways that defied logic. That night, as the survivors slept, Rylan remained awake for a while. He thought of the crash, the strange planet, and the alien creatures he had seen. He thought of the others who might still be out there, and he made silent promises to himself. Humans never left anyone behind. He would find his crew, no matter the odds. Ilaria watched him from a distance, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. She had learned many things in her long life, but nothing like this. Nothing had prepared her for a human's endurance, compassion, and unshakable will. She began to wonder if her people had underestimated humanity. Perhaps there was more to these beings than the texts had ever described. The next morning, the group prepared to continue their search for the remaining crew members. Illyria healed Rylan's injuries as best she could, but even with her skill, she knew he would continue to push beyond what any normal being could endure. He did not complain, nor did he hesitate. He moved with a determination that inspired those around him, humans, aliens, and creatures alike, as they moved deeper into the forest. Rylan led the way, scanning the environment, calling out softly. For his crew and adjusting his strategy based on each observation, Ilaria followed, providing support and guidance. But she also observed. Learning from his instinctive problem-solving and endurance by midday, they encountered a narrow canyon, its walls steep and covered in creeping vines. Normally, it would have been treacherous for any alien or human unfamiliar with the terrain, yet Rylan navigated it carefully, encouraging the others to follow his pace. He was careful with his own injuries, yet he did not slow. Each step, each decision was measured and precise. Ilaria marveled at him. Even weakened, he was a natural leader, inspiring confidence and calm in those around him. His human nature, she realized, was not just endurance, it was courage, empathy, and strategy combined into one. This species, she thought, was extraordinary as the sun began to dip again. They spotted a small smoke column rising in the distance. It was faint, almost hidden among the trees, but Rylan noticed immediately. "There," he said. "Someone is there." They moved quickly, but cautiously toward the smoke. As they approached, they found two more humans, frightened but alive, sheltering near a small cave. Rylan's presence calmed them instantly. They had seen the crash, felt the chaos, and were terrified, yet the human captain reassured them with his calm determination. The next morning, the air of Theravi was crisp and filled with anticipation. Captain Rylan Hale had gathered all the surviving humans and the alien healer Ilaria near the sanctuary. Though their injuries were tended to and their spirits restored, the planet still posed dangers that could not be ignored. Deep within its core, the energy that powered the land was fluctuating. If left unchecked, it could disrupt the planet's balance and put every living being at risk. Rylan studied the map the survivors had sketched based on their observations. The core chamber lay in the heart of the mountains, a vast structure of natural rock and energy conduits that glowed faintly through cracks. It was treacherous, even for a fully healthy human, let alone a man recovering from a crash. Yet he felt no hesitation. Humans had a way of moving forward when danger called. It was not recklessness, it was determination fused with hope. "We must stabilize the core," Rylan said, his voice steady. "If we don't, this planet, and everyone on it, will be in danger." "I'll go first." Ilaria stepped forward, worry etched on her face. "Rylan, you are not fully healed. Your body is still weak. Even the energy from the core could harm you." He shook his head. "I know. But humans, we endure. If I wait until I'm perfect, it will be too late. We act now, with what we have." Ilaria studied him, her mind racing. She had witnessed his endurance, his ability to push beyond natural limits. But this task could be unlike anything he had faced. Still, she could not deny the truth in his words. Humans were remarkable. Their spirit, their will, refused to accept impossibility. She nodded. "Then I will accompany you. Not to fight, but to guide and protect." The journey to the mountains was slow and demanding. The path was rocky, uneven, and steep. Rylan led with careful precision, testing each foothold before committing his weight. His injuries had healed enough for movement, but pain still lingered. Ilaria adjusted her pace to match him, offering support whenever a step faltered. The human captain never complained. Every step he took seemed to draw energy from some inner reservoir that refused to deplete. Along the way, they encountered natural barriers, rushing streams, dense patches of vines, and uneven ground that threatened to trip even the nimblest traveler. But Rylan moved with balance and focus, encouraging the others to do the same. He used fallen branches to test the terrain, guided weaker survivors carefully, and never stopped moving. Ilaria noted every action, every small decision. Humans, she realized, were not just survivors, they were teachers in endurance, demonstrating how determination could overcome even the harshest conditions. By mid-afternoon, they reached the base of the mountains. The glow from the energy core seeped through cracks in the rock, casting the canyon in a surreal, almost ethereal light. The air was warmer here, pulsing faintly with the energy of the planet itself. Rylan paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the resonance of the core beneath him. "This is it," he said quietly. The source of the instability. Ilaria studied him closely. The energy. It can overwhelm you if you are not careful. Your body may resist, but your mind can falter under its pressure. Ryland's eyes were steady, filled with resolve. "I've faced worse," he replied simply. "We humans adapt." They entered a narrow canyon that led directly to the core chamber. The walls pulsed faintly, glowing like living veins. Every step made the ground tremble slightly. Ryland led the way, carefully placing his hands on the rock to balance himself. His energy was tiring, but he refused to yield to exhaustion. Ilaria followed, guiding the weaker survivors, and reinforcing his movements with gentle healing energy when the strain became visible. As they approached the chamber, the energy of the planet grew more intense. The air shimmered, and small arcs of light flickered across the walls. Most beings would have been paralyzed with fear, but Ryland advanced with determination, assessing every detail, calculating every step. The chamber itself was enormous, a vast hollow of rock and energy streams crisscrossing like veins of light. At the center was a control nexus, an alien structure that pulsed in sync with the planet's unstable energy. This is the core's regulator," Ilaria said, awe in her voice. "If it fails, the energy could explode outward, destabilizing the planet's balance." Ryland nodded, stepping closer. "Then I need to reach it." Ilaria held out her hands. "It is dangerous. Even a small mistake could harm you permanently." He looked at her with calm resolve. "I know, but humans. We do not wait for perfect conditions. We act. And if we fail, at least we tried." Ilaria could only watch as he approached the nexus. His hands brushed the surface, energy coursing through him. The glow reacted to his presence, intensifying and swirling around him. For a moment it seemed overwhelming. The human's muscles tensed, his body threatening to collapse under the pressure. Yet he stood firm, focusing every thought, every breath, on stabilizing the energy. The nexus hummed and pulsed. Ryland moved his hands along its surface, guiding the energy, adjusting the flow. Sparks of light danced around him, yet he did not flinch. His body shivered, exhaustion visible, but his mind was unwavering. Ilaria watched, unable to mask her amazement. She had never seen such endurance. Humans, she realized fully now, were capable of feats that defied reason. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The energy began to stabilize, responding to his guidance. Ryland's strength waned, his body trembling, yet he pressed on. Sweat dripped from his